claiming they will come out on top. We have reports from both campaigns, plus an update on the balance of power in the Senate following yesterday's results. And fight for the unborn. Analysis of a pro-life initiative on the ballot yesterday in Colorado. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. Well, tonight, the battle lines over the race for the White House are set, even as the results for statewide races continue to come in. Joe Biden has now won the swing state of Wisconsin. Right there, you are looking at the Electoral College map, and right now, so far, Democrat Joe Biden is projected to have 264 Electoral College votes. This as President Donald Trump is expected to have 214. 270 are needed to be elected. We are awaiting calls in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and in Nevada. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. And we have team election coverage tonight. Owen Jensen is at the White House as the Trump campaign files lawsuits in some battleground states. Mark Irons is in Delaware with the Joe Biden campaign, and Eric Rosales is on Capitol Hill with the balance of power in the Senate. We start, though, now with White House correspondent Owen Jensen, who is live from the North Lawn of the White House. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you on a night that is changing very rapidly, minute by minute. Just a short while ago, President Donald Trump tweeted out that he has won and has taken the electoral votes of Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina. Now, those states have not yet been called. And just a short while ago, we did learn that Michigan has been called for former Vice President Joe Biden. Also, the president is challenging the election results in Wisconsin.
President Donald Trump's campaign does not like what it's seeing in Wisconsin. They're asking for a recount, saying in a statement, there have been reports of irregularities in several Wisconsin counties, which raise serious doubts about the validity of the results. President Trump is also very skeptical of the vote counting process. They're finding Biden votes all over the place in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, so bad for our country. In the wee hours this morning, the president addressed the nation about the election.
We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
And as the day progressed and ballot counting continued in places like Detroit, President Donald Trump tweeted, "Last night I was leading, often solidly in many key states. In almost all instances, Democrat run and controlled. Then, one by one, they started to magically disappear as surprise ballot dumps were counted. Very strange. And the pollsters got it completely and historically wrong. Twitter flagged that tweet as misleading. Meanwhile, state leaders promised transparency.
But the most important thing is that we have accurate results, again, even if that takes a little longer than we're used to.
What's been happening here on the ground in Michigan, all throughout the state, are bipartisan groups of election workers tabulating those ballots effectively, methodically, and securely.
Also, the Trump campaign has filed lawsuits in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and I'll read it verbatim here. They are demanding better access for campaign observers to locations where ballots are being processed and counted. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen's reporting for us tonight. With the projected win in Wisconsin and in Michigan, Joe Biden's possible path to the White House is looking more clear for the Biden campaign. Correspondent Mark Irons is in Wilmington, where the former vice president spoke this afternoon. Mark.
Tracy, that's right. At this hour, the Biden campaign is feeling pretty optimistic. We started watching those election results come in, and they started to shift in the favor of the former vice president this morning in some of those battleground states, the ones he's now taken, Michigan and Wisconsin. The election result here is not final, but I will tell you that Joe Biden is feeling pretty confident about the numbers he is seeing.
After a long night of counting, it's clear that we're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report that when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
The former vice president today after receiving word he won Wisconsin.
I will work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as I will for those who did vote for me.
And before that, in the very early morning hours after Election Day, he reassured his base.
Keep the faith, guys. We're going to win this. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Soon after, the Associated Press reported Joe Biden won Arizona, a state that reliably voted Republican in recent elections. And as Americans awoke this morning, ballot count totals in battleground states, Michigan and Wisconsin, began to favor the former vice president. Joe Biden's campaign manager believes he is on a clear path to victory.
Joe Biden is on track to win this election, and he will be the next president of the United States.
And as the Trump campaign demands a recount in Wisconsin, Scott Walker, the former Republican governor of the state, is casting doubt that a recount could provide a substantial difference. Referring to the total vote gap President Trump would have to overcome, Walker tweeted, "As I said, 20,000 is a high hurdle." And let's take a look at the popular vote where Joe Biden is leading and already has set a historic record. As ballots continue to be counted, he has more than 70 million votes, and that puts him at the highest total vote count in a U.S. presidential election. He surpasses the former record holder, Barack Obama, in 2008.
Okay.
Tracy?
Thank you so much, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight in Wilmington, Delaware. Well, it's not just the battle for the White House that we're keeping an eye on this evening. We are also watching the battle for control of the Senate. As of right now, Republicans are projected to hold 48 seats, with Democrats expected to hold 47. The party that reaches 51 seats holds the majority. Democrats faced disappointment last night as their hopes of winning Senate control faded, but it is still too soon for Republicans to take a victory lap as ballot counts are still yet not official in several states. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric.
Well, Tracy, we know of at least one Senate race in the state of Georgia that will be headed to a runoff election come January. Even Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that he still doesn't know on whether or not he'll be able to keep his Majority Leader status. And as the votes continue to be counted in key battleground states such as North Carolina and Michigan, in the state of Maine, we now know of an official winner.
I just received a very gracious call from Sarah Gideon conceding the race.
And with that, Republican Senator Susan Collins wins her battle for re-election. Democrats were hoping to win Maine plus control of the Senate. They did pick up seats in Colorado and Arizona, but lost the Senate race in Alabama. And Republicans also won in Iowa, Texas, Kansas, Montana, and South Carolina, home of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
I will do everything I can to stop the radical agenda coming from Nancy Pelosi's house. So, Speaker Pelosi, if you enact the agenda you're talking about, we're going to bury it in the Senate because it's bad for America.
Chairman Graham is still celebrating the confirmation of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Patrick Bertil of the Faith and Freedom Coalition tells me Justice Barrett's confirmation was key to getting practicing Catholics to the polls.
Justice Barrett's nomination was one of those moments that it just makes the choice very stark and very clear. It reminds people both what's at stake and really what are the differences between the two parties' approaches. Who would they have put onto the court?
And in Iowa, another win for Republicans as Senator Joni Ernst was reelected in what the Susan B. Anthony list calls, quote, a victory for pro-life women everywhere, adding, quote, we expect we will have a record number of pro-life women serving in the next Congress.
And in the House, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy held a press conference today, and he said that he's expecting anywhere from 14 to 19 new congresswomen, Republican congresswomen, to be coming into the House. That would be the record-breaking number of congresswomen coming into the House at one time. Tracy.
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you so much, Eric. And joining me now on Skype to take a look at where things stand in the race for the White House and the battle for the control of the Senate is Sean Trendy, senior elections analyst for Real Clear Politics. Sean, welcome to the show. So good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, the race for the White House, as we know, is really too close to call right now at this point, as both President Trump and his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, tried to secure the 270 needed in the Electoral College votes. Where do things stand right now at this moment?
Well, a lot of it will come down to Pennsylvania. Joe Biden needs to win the remaining absentee ballots with about 70% of the vote. But as it turns out, that's about the share of the vote that he's gotten so far. Even if President Trump were to win Pennsylvania, though, he'd need to get some luck in Arizona, get that call reversed, or in Nevada.
Let's talk a little bit more about what's the path needed for each one of them to win at this point.
Yeah, so for Joe Biden, it's pretty straightforward. Keep Arizona and then flip Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania in some combination. President Trump needs to hold on to Georgia and get Pennsylvania in his column, and then again hope for a long shot in Arizona because there's still a lot of votes to be counted there.
Sean, as we know, former Vice President Joe Biden was ahead in a lot of the polls leading up to Election Day, but we can see how things, are playing out. What do you think we haven't seen in what was predicted to be a certain victory? What happened?
Well, there's a reason they hold the elections. At the end of the day, I think some pollsters probably missed some Trump voters that didn't want to take calls. And I think our poll averages showed some late-breaking movement towards Donald Trump. So I think the combination of those two factors are what you're seeing today.
Yeah, and we also knew going into Election Day it was pretty likely that we would have to wait for results while the ballots were being counted. And, well, we've heard the lawsuits have begun. What impact do you think that's going to have?
It really depends. I think Scott Walker, you mentioned earlier, said that the margin was probably too big in Wisconsin to overcome. I think that's right. If you do get a state like Pennsylvania, if it comes down to a couple hundred ballots, maybe Arizona or Nevada does the same, that's something that could be overturned with litigation. So it really just depends if we're looking at a Florida 2000 situation or not.
All right, Sean, well, before I let you go, I also want to get your take on where things stand in the Senate. Democrats, we're hoping to pick up enough seats to gain control. How is it looking at this point?
Well, Republicans are feeling pretty good about Alaska and North Carolina, and with good reason. That will get them to 50 Senate seats. So it's just going to be a question of whether their candidates in Georgia, whether Senator Perdue crosses the 50% threshold to avoid the runoff. Otherwise, control of the Senate's not going to be decided until January in the runoff elections.
Sean, and quickly, any final thoughts when it comes to the presidential election?
I think a lot of us are just glad that it's finally come to an end. It seemed interminable, but I think democracy can wait long enough to get all the votes counted.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll leave it right there. Sean Trendy, Senior Elections Analyst for Real Clear Politics. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, a pro-life initiative on the ballot in Colorado is defeated. We have reaction.
1 Corinthians 10:31, very simple and very clear. Whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do for the glory of God. Everything, even eating and drinking. Well, how do we eat and drink for the glory of God? Well, think about it. Do we put the food in our bodies to take care of our bodies for the sake of the glory of God? Do we abuse our bodies even with the food and drink that we take into our bodies? Even eating and drinking, the day-to-day sustenance that we have to have in order to live, Scripture tells us is necessary, that it's done with an intention that seeks to be done for the glory of God, to honor God. And if even eating and drinking must be done for the glory of God, then, as Scripture does say, whatever you do, whatever we do, must be done for the glory of God. In the end, all of this, when we stand before God, is going to come to our attention, and we're going to be challenged, questioned, have to be accountable to God for everything that we have done, even eating and drinking.
The EWTN family mourns the passing of our dear friend and colleague Andrew Walther, President and Chief Operating Officer of EWTN News. Eternal rest grant unto Andrew, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. Amen.
See who's coming to the Pinto House on At Home with Jim and Joy. Next time, author Philip Campbell reveals how the Catholic Church shaped history and civilization as we know it. At Home with Jim and Joy, here on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
A pro-life victory last night in Louisiana as voters approved Amendment 1. The measure prevents the state's courts from finding a, quote, right to abortion or to public abortion funding in the state's constitution. Kristen Day, executive director of Democrats for Life of America, joins me now on Skype to talk more about that and other pro-life election results. Kristen, welcome back. Always great to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Kristen, I want to start off with Louisiana. What does the passage of Amendment 1, which is also known as Love Life Amendment, what does it mean for the protection of the unborn, and exactly what will it do?
It makes sure that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, the state can never come back and say that there is a right in the Constitution to either pay for abortion or to have any sort of abortion laws enshrined by the courts. So it was a very exciting victory. We are so proud of Senator Katrina Jackson and all our pro-life Democrats in Louisiana who worked really hard to pass this important amendment.
Yeah, really incredible. Another pro-life ballot initiative I want to talk about is Proposition 115 in Colorado, which would have banned abortion at 22 weeks. Sadly, as you know, it was defeated. And I know that you traveled to Colorado to rally in support of its passage. Why do you think it didn't pass, and what happens next?
We were ahead in the polls, and we were doing pretty well about educating people on what exactly this ballot initiative would do. Unfortunately, just a bunch of money came in from the other side, over 9 million, just a few weeks before the election, and they just pumped money in and ads in to distort what the Proposition 115 really was. It's a real shame that it lost, where we were pretty upset by the outside money coming in at the last minute.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit up, Kristen, and talk about the pro-life Democratic candidates in this year's election. I know your group was supporting former Democrat turned independent John DeBerry in Tennessee for his bid for the State House. How did he do, and what's your takeaway from some of those races across the country?
When you look at Middle America and you look at the people who are running there, good people like John DeBerry, they do face, especially pro-life Democrats, they face pushback from their own party and also from the Republicans. So in Middle America, we had quite a number of losses, and John DeBerry was one of them, which was just so sad. He's such a decent man, and I look forward to working with him in the future. He's going to rally with us to elect more pro-life Democrats. But then we also had pro-life Democrats who were attacked by the Republicans. So these brave men and women who run as pro-life Democrats do so because they really believe it. And we were successful in other parts of the country. We had over 78 of our endorsed candidates won, which is very exciting. And we look forward to increasing that number with our Run Pro-Life initiative. So if anybody is interested in running as a pro-life Democrat, reach out to me.
That sounds great. Kristen, why do you think, though, it's so challenging for Democratic candidates with pro-life views? And what do you think is needed to change that?
Well, it's difficult for pro-life Democrats because, as I said, they get hit back from their own party and they get hit back from, the pro-life movement as well, who really is focused on electing Republicans. I think it's our job as Democrats for Life. We need to raise more money. We need to do more outreach effort. We need to do more support for these candidates. And to educate our own party on the importance of the Big Tent and being inclusive for pro-life Democratic candidates. It was unconscionable what the Tennessee Democratic Party did to John DeBerry by removing him from the ballot and telling him he could no longer be a Democrat because he opposed killing babies. It was just unconscionable.
Kristen, we have a little less than a minute left, but I want to ask you this. I want to get your thoughts on the presidential election. Of course, we're still waiting for the final results, but what is your take, and specifically looking at the pro-life movement?
Right. Well, there were a lot of pro-life pickups, and there will be still a pro-life majority in the Senate from a pro-life perspective. So that is positive. And listening to Vice President Biden's speech this afternoon, and he was talking about unity and talking about representing all Americans. So we are hopeful if that is the outcome of the race, that he means what he says. And he will work with pro-life Democrats and not just the abortion lobby and pushing forward their agenda to expand abortion. So that is our hope for the future, if that is the outcome of this election.
Oh, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on. We always appreciate it. Kristen Day, Executive Director of Democrats for Life of America. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.
Up next, a closer look at the vote counting in battleground states that may decide the presidential race.
Hello, family. Ever since Mother Angelica founded EWTN almost 40 years ago, our network has been funded by faithful Catholics from all walks of life. Young families, single people, grandmothers in nursing homes, parish priests, and the list goes on. To everyone who's donated to our mission, I want to take the opportunity today to say thank you. It's because of your prayers and donations that we can share the daily Mass with those who are homebound. It is through your support that we can proclaim the truth and beauty of the Church and her teachings. And most importantly, we can share the love of God with a world in need. Whether you've recently joined us or have supported the network from the beginning, we simply could not do what we do without your ongoing generosity. We're so appreciative of the testimonials and stories that many of our EWTN family have shared with us throughout the years. But we want to hear your story of how EWTN has had an impact on your life. Please know that we're always grateful to God for you, our EWTN family. May God bless you.
To share your story or to make a donation, please visit EWTN.com/mystory. You can also make a donation by calling us at 1-800-447-EWTN Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, or send your donation to EWTN 5817 Old Leeds Road, Irondale, Alabama 35210.
Behold, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, join us in daily prayer and thanksgiving for Christ's most merciful heart. The Chaplet of the Divine Mercy, here on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
While we wait to see who wins the White House, my next guest says regardless of the outcome, the GOP has a tremendous opportunity. Joining me now by Skype is Rachel Bovard, Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Rachel, welcome back. Always good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, Rachel, let's talk about what you see as a tremendous opportunity for the GOP. What did you mean by that? And what do you see as a lessons learned, especially in the battleground states?
Well, I think broadly speaking, regardless of the outcome of the presidency, what we saw was a new Republican coalition that was building. And these are broad trend lines we're seeing from exit polls and even certain counties that President Trump won. We're seeing a much more multiracial working class Republican Party. And I think the opportunity lies in the Republicans' recognition of this fact. This party is becoming more big tent, more reflective of a working class blue collar voter. But to take advantage of that, they're going to have to become a party that reflects that from their policies. But this is the ingredients toward a relevant, sustainable GOP. And I think that presents tremendous opportunities for institutional Republicans if they're willing to learn those lessons with their policies. And by that, I mean, focusing on working class economics, much more focus on social issues, cultural issues, where their base has told them they are. So it's incumbent upon Republicans to learn those lessons. But I think if they do, it's a very good sign.
Rachel, the Trump campaign said today the race is in, quote, recount territory, vowing to challenge results. What are your thoughts on that? And what message do you think that sends to the American people?
Well, President Trump's campaign has always said they are going to fight this to the end. They're going to make sure that every single vote is counted and that the integrity of that vote is protected. So you're already seeing the Trump campaign say they want to recount in Wisconsin. They're challenging some of the decisions that have been made about calling the race in Arizona. And they're really fighting for every last vote in Pennsylvania. Every candidate has the right to do that. I suspect you'll see it from the Biden campaign as well. But Trump's not going to go quietly. And I think he shouldn't. Each candidate has the opportunity and the right to do this.
Rachel, as you know, there were a number of gains for Republican women in the House. In fact, at least one congressman calling it, quote, a bright spot of the 2020 election. Let's talk about that and the factors that you think contributed to those wins.
Well, I think the Republican Party is beginning to recognize that their base is far more socially conservative. They care about working class kitchen table issues, which has always been part of the Republican Party, but I think emphasized less in the last couple of decades. But I think a shift in focus from President Trump has really appealed to a lot of, suburban women. He did well with that vote. The mainstream media told us he wasn't going to, but in the exit polls, he actually did well with suburban women. And I think you were seeing that reflected in who was elected as well. So a lot of these women are unapologetically pro-life. They care about family issues, and they care about sort of the kitchen table jobs and economic issues. This is where the Republican Party needs to be. And I think these women are going to have a very big role in shaping that future.
Rachel, I want to talk a little bit more about demographics. We talked about the Latino vote, the African-American vote. You mentioned the suburban women. But what about the young adult vote? Which candidate do you think resonated the most with them? And ultimately, did it bring them out to the polls?
So the youth vote is always this, everybody wants it, but no one can actually catch it. It's kind of like a unicorn. I do think you saw a big youth vote turnout this time around, but it never quite matches expectations. But I do think you are seeing sort of the college-educated white voter becoming a Democrat voter. That used to be. The college-educated white voter used to be a reliable Republican vote. It is no longer. It is now a Democrat voter. And the Republican Party, to the converse, is becoming more of a blue-collar, working-class voter. And so the emphasis in the party politics is going to have to reflect that. And I think when all is said and done, you are going to see sort of the college-educated youth vote go for Biden in the majority. Some of them are going to come to Trump, but the majority are going to go to the Democrats. And you're kind of seeing that a little bit in the woke culture of the university starting to spread as well. The universities have had a big impact in shaping a generation of voters in the progressive direction. And I think the Republican Party is concerned about that.
And Rachel, I quickly want to talk about social media. What type of influence do you think it had on this election?
I think social media has a tremendous amount of impact on the election. Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, was actually in the Senate a week ago saying, no, Twitter can't have an impact on the electoral outcome. And meanwhile, Twitter and all of the social media platforms have been moderating for what they call election integrity, taking down some content, censoring others. I think this has a huge ramification on our elections. People need to be able to speak freely on these social media platforms. They are the biggest speech platforms in the world. And I think Congress has a very vested interest in looking at this. Should President Trump get a second term, he has said he's interested in looking at this as well. We're kind of in unprecedented territory. These companies are new. And I think they're going to face a little bit of a blowback, I think, for their behavior around this election.
Okay, Rachel, we're going to leave right there. Thank you so much for your time. Rachel Boulevard, Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And just a reminder, we will have comprehensive coverage of results and reaction on EWTN News Nightly in this 2020 election. But for now, we thank you for watching tonight, and for the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We will leave you tonight with a look at the electoral map. Joe Biden currently with 264 electoral votes, and President Trump with 214. Good night and God bless.
Join Father Joseph Mary Wolfe for The Church Universal, coming up next on EWTN.
It's not just what you report or how you report the news. It's how many people do you touch with the truth. From covering breaking stories worldwide to providing in-depth news analysis and commentary, the anchors, reporters, editors,